Okay, we're going to ask a lot of questions, so I'm going to stop. Jacques worked with the Grand Charles, Charles de Gaulle, as all you know who he was. I'm going to ask Jacques this question. What kind of a person was he, one-on-one, and what kind of food did he like? Because Jacques was his personal chef.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. And that was a long time ago. I worked for the French government between 1950. Someone introduced me a few weeks ago. I was somewhere and said, that man was chef to 3 French presidents, and the 3 of them are dead. They are. At that time, certainly the cook was at the bottom of the social scale, and no one ever called you for kudo or to compliment you, and no one would ever come to the kitchen. Any good mother would have wanted her child to marry a doctor or a lawyer, certainly not a cook. But now we are genius. See, I don't know what happened. The menu were whatever the president or Mrs. de Gaulle wanted, like leg of lamb, not too rare, it's not too good for the blood of the president, like colin, colin, which is a kind of very large egg, just poached. Basically, very classic, simple dish, well made, of the highest possible quality. Like we had the cheese delivered by Androuet, which is a famous cheesemaker in Paris, every day, with a number on it, to hand it one to the employee after. It was really very high quality. When we had the oyster, it was Prunier was a famous seafood restaurant in Paris. So the écailleur, that is the oyster opener of Prunier, would come, wait until they start eating, and up at the oyster, so that type of thing. When it comes to state dinner, then it's different. It has to do with the protocol, so you talk with the protocol. It has to be a long lunch or a short lunch, 1 meat, 2 meat. It has to be a very important dinner or a short one. You have to take into consideration certain dietary conditions, certain cultural concession. I mean, you're not going to serve a roasted pork to the King of Morocco or one of those things. So they tell you, you cannot do this, so I propose 2 or 3 menus, and in what I propose, it's okay, we'll do this, and that. That's usually the way it worked for, as I say, for official reception, head of state, and so forth. But as I say, you would never be called for kudo in the dining room or whatever. And de Gaulle would tell me the day after they liked it, it was fine too. If anyone came to the kitchen, they were going to get yelled that something was wrong. So quite different nowadays. Yes.
Suzanne?
When I know you grew up with your mother in the kitchen,
Yes.
did you ever consider any other profession, or did you always just knew you were going to be cooking?
That's a good question. I left school when I was 13 to go into apprenticeship, formal apprenticeship. I finished my certificate into primary school, and but we had blinders. See, the life in front of you was this. My father was a cabinet maker, so was his father and grandfather. My mother had that little restaurant, and I loved that world, but I would never have thought that I could be a lawyer or a doctor or go to school. It was not part of our life, not part of our culture, so I would never have thought that. Of course I changed, I came to America after, and I went back to school and so forth, but at that time the decisions were relatively easy. There was no television, remember, so I didn't know I could become a great doctor in half an hour by looking at television. So the choice was pretty simple. And also, I can count 7 restaurants in my family. My mother, my 2 aunts, my cousin in Lyon, and so forth. By 7 women, I have to say, I'm the first male getting into that business. So much for many Americans thinking that the typical French chef is male, of course, and it's probably true to a certain extent. Yes, sir.
I wonder if you could comment, because there are a lot of students here, on what seems to be an apparent shift in the profession from the type of training that you went through, which was to learn how to reproduce classical dishes, to the type of chefs that are coming out now that seem to want to innovate at every turn.
Right. Yes, certainly, as I said, the mighty God of novelty does a lot to destroy. Yes, I mean, without any question, you have to learn, you have to become a craftsman. And that takes years of practice. At that point, you know, you may start putting some of your own idea in it. You work somewhere or you do an apprenticeship somewhere, all you have to say is, yes, chef, that's about all. I'm not going to ask you his opinion, your opinion, and you absorb that. And you try to look at it, if you want, through the eye of that chef. If you had the chance, for example, of working with Thomas Keller in New York, maybe the greatest American chef in this country now, you're not there to tell him what to do. He will. You say, yes, chef, and you try to visualize what he's doing. You try to visualize his sense of aesthetic, his sense of taste. Whether it coincides or not with your sense of taste or your sense of aesthetic is basically material. So you work a couple of years this way, then a couple of years with another one, then a couple of years with another one. And after 7 or 8, 10 years, you have absorbed an enormous amount of knowledge, technique, certain palette of taste, and then now you can regurgitate, if you want, excuse the pun, that is, you give it back, but now you're going to start filtering it through your own sense of taste, your sense of aesthetic. And now this is the time when you can start doing some of your own stuff. But the way it is now, of course, years ago television did not exist, and but I mean, food television, newspaper, and book writing. I mean, when I did La Technique, one of my first book was published in, believe it, 1975. I don't know how many books was that year, but maybe a dozen. So a lot of people looked at it. Last year there were 2,350 cookbooks published in America. So I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, I get probably 60, 50, 100 manuscripts a year to ask me to do a quote, read them. I don't have time to read all of that stuff, you know. So it's totally another world. Even the food journalism did not exist. The New York Times started with Craig Level in 1957 or 8, I believe, and I came here in 1959. So it's a totally different world than it used to be. And, but yet, for me, you still have to learn, and you have to learn and repeat and repeat and repeat, because you're a craftsman, so it becomes so much part of your own DNA, if you want, that you don't even have to think about it, it works. At that point, you're a good technician. Doesn't make you a great chef. If you happen to have talent, you have the knowledge in your hand to take that talent somewhere. And if you put a bit of love into it occasionally, then you can reach some superlative dishes. But there is that process that you have to go through. I teach at Boston University for the last 32 years. One of the classes that I give is a class in a certification program, which is a 3-month program, where I have usually 12, 15 students, work a couple of days with them. I will be there next month, actually. And sometimes I do different type of class, but let's say I do a perfect meal sometimes, which is a roast chicken, a boiled potato, and a salad. I do it exactly the way it has to be done. A little bit of the fat of the chicken in my vinaigrette, a little bit of the juice of the chicken on the salad. The seasoning has to be right, the salad has to be at the right moment, the temperature has to be right, the amount of oil, and so forth. Very simple. The student goes to the stove to duplicate that meal. And I say, please don't try to be creative and do something that no one has ever seen. Because the paradox is that you are different. And out of those 12 chicken, I will have 12 different chicken. 2 or 3 of them practically perfect, 3 cold, 3 burn, 300 cook, but they will be different because we are different. There is no way you can do exactly the same way that I do. So, as I said, the paradox here that people torture their mind to be different, but you don't have to. Cook with your, with your spirit, and cook with your guts, and it will be different than the next one. But don't try to be different until you have some knowledge of craftsmanship and knowledge of cooking. So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, could you tell us when you met Julia Child and your relationship with her over the years?
Yes, I met Julia in 1960, so not much after I arrived here. At that time, she was quite unknown. She just came from France, actually, and she had that school in France. They called it Trois Gourmands. But she never wrote for a newspaper. She had never done a book, and television didn't exist till then, so of course no one knew her. And I had a friend of mine, her name was Helen McCullough. She was the food editor of McCall, How Beautiful, and she was never married to, and she was an older, very strict woman. And somehow, it was Craig Claiborne. Yeah, I met Craig Claiborne to start with. He came to the pavilion to do a piece to become friends with Craig, and he introduced me to Helen, and she kind of became my surrogate mother. Don't wear those stupid socks you do in France, don't do sleeves, don't do that, whatever. And at some point, she said, oh, I got a manuscript, do you want to look at that? I looked at a manuscript on French cooking, and I said, yeah, that's pretty good. And she said, well, it's a woman who wrote it, and she lives in Santa Barbara, California. She's coming next week, let's cook for her. So she's a very tall woman with a terrible voice to know that was Julia. And I spoke French, actually, with her. First time I met her, because she came from France, and her French was slightly better than my English at that time. So we became friends, yes. And then through Helen as well, she spoke with James Beard, like once or twice a day. I mean, so I met James Beard within 2-3 weeks after that. Yes, ma'am.
I know that most chefs like to use all fresh foods. I know Julia Child used to say only use butter. Do you ever cheat and use something not fresh or oleo?
No, I don't call that cheating. I mean, anything I like, I eat. I have no complex about food. Whether it's a hamburger or I don't like marshmallow too much, but I love Oreo cookie, yes. No, and to tell you the truth, I don't know which book we have here, but one of the latest books that I have there called Essential Pepin, I have like 750 recipes. Now, I may be regarded as the quintessential French chef. Maybe you look at page 32, it's a black bean soup with a sliced banana and cilantro on top. And next to it there is a fried chicken. And next to it a gravlax, which did not exist years ago. So I don't consider, I never really try to stay totally French. I'm not really interested in this. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I mean, I'm very frank with Lydia Bastianich, for example, and for her, Italian, it's very important to be pure Italian, the right way to, and that's great. I mean, you know, it's terrific. But I never felt this way about French food, and I don't try to be French. By the same token, I don't try not to be French. I don't really think much about it. I go, there's some ideas that I have, I cook something, you call it whatever you want. So, but yes, certainly my training has been in French cooking all my life. But now that I have moved from New York and I have more of a New England accent, people don't feel
That's good.
yes.
What's your favorite dish?
My favorite dish? A free dish. I might buy it somewhere. You cook for me, it's free. That's my favorite dish. Yes?
What advice would you give to these culinary students as they pursue a career in the culinary arts?
What advice? Well, you know, it used to be now when I am at French Culinary Institute, very often people will come to see me at the end of the program and say, oh, chef, I have a great idea for a television show, or I have a great idea for a book. Say, here is a number. No, this did not exist, of course, when I was a kid, because as I say, it was very anonymous, the type of work that we did in the kitchen. There was not much glamour to it. So you have to get into that business for that, you know, for the love of cooking, you know, for the love of pleasing others, for the love of sharing. That's very, very important. You may become famous, you may end up with a television show, you may end up with a book, but you don't go into that business for that reason, because it's likely never to happen. However, it's a wonderful world, you know. If you'll probably get very convinced by the time you're 35 years old, working 12 hours a day behind the stove. But it's a giving world, you know. You give a lot. You give a great deal of love. When people see you, they smile. You're bringing pleasure to them. If you're a doctor, you may not bring them pleasure, you know. So there is no political application in what we do. There is no racial application in what we do. There is no gender application in what we do. There is political application. You cook for the pleasure of cooking and giving pleasure to people, and they, as I said, like you, and you know, smile when you come around. So it's a good way of spending your life if you like to do that. Yeah. We're genius.
But did you ever think, 40, 50 years ago, you would see
no.
food the way it is today?
No, but it is.
3 networks just for food.
Well, I was with someone a few weeks ago, a woman who was a food historian, so-called. She said that there is 407 cookery on television. I don't know whether it's accurate, maybe it's not 407, maybe 350 or whatever. It's just amazing, you know. So, yeah, I mean, I did go to the White House when I was asked by President Kennedy for the reason that I had no idea of the potential of success or doing. I had been with the French president. Television didn't exist. I was never been on television, but never on a newspaper, never on a magazine, never anywhere. Jacques was in the bottom. So when I was asked to go to the White House, I had no idea of the potential. And in fact, we were talking about that before. The one who went was René Verdon, a friend of mine from New York. I put him in touch with the people who called me and so forth. And so Jacqueline Kennedy at the time already took picture with him, with the chef. It was the 60s, you know, woman liberation, organic garden. There was a great deal of you know, social change taking place. But if you look at who was there before René Verdon, was a black woman from the South, a lot of no one would have known no more than in France. That's the way it was, you know. So it changed.
Thank you.
Yes. Do you want to take a picture?